All right, y'all, we are live. Woo! Okay, everyone. Good evening. I was about to say good afternoon, y'all. It's been one of those days, but thank you so much to everyone who's joining us right now for this piping hot cafecito. Ooh, don't be judging us. We might be having cafecito right now. It is 6 p.m. and we are busy people that need to be waking up early tomorrow. So we might be having some water in our mugs. Don't be judging us. But y'all, thank you so much for
Don't do
joining
it.
us. Let's do it. This is, y'all are in for a treat. This is Cafecito con LatinxEd with our LatinxEd fellows, okay? So please drop in the chat where you're joining us from. Let us know how pumped you are about this Cafecito con Barbie y con Elmer. Y'all, this is the fifth cafecito in this installment. And don't even get me started in the amazing four other cafecitos that we've been having with our glorious fellows. But please just stay tuned and y'all can go watch those other cafecitos afterwards because this one, y'all are not even ready. So as y'all may see here, we are joined by Barbie and Elmer. And y'all, this cafecito is going to be about Latinx identity and social emotional learning. Y estos dos, they are masters in this topic. Y'all better have your coffee ready, your beverage ready, because it's been cool and chilly lately. Because y'all are going to be sitting down for a hot minute and listening to these two glorious minds. Barbie and Elmer, bienvenidos. Welcome. So
Hola.
excited.
Hola, súper emocionada, super excited to be here.
Sí, hola, hola, gracias. Excited to be here.
Y'all, and before we jump into this conversation, because there's going to be so many glorious rabbit holes that we're going to go into, I would love for both of y'all to introduce yourselves to our audience and to let them know just how amazing y'all are, starting with nuestra querida Barbie.
So my name is Barbie Garayúa-Tudryn. I am a school counselor in the Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools. I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, into a family of hell-raising female educators, like literally went beyond what was required of them to care for their community in a small barrio of San Juan called Villa Prades. My dad was not an educator. He was street educated though, and he was ingenious and he was fierce and he was a hardworking entrepreneur. And I think that whole combo between a hell-raising educator and that fierce street educated entrepreneur definitely lives in my blood nowadays. And so do you want us to talk a little bit more about, how about this? Elmer, your turn. We'll take turns.
Sí, dale. Me llamo Elmer Orellana, he, him, his. I'm a hope dealer, bridge builder, and community healing agent. And I'm currently work for DCPS Persist. That's the District of Columbia Public School System with a college success and persistence program. I'm a first generation college graduate from El Salvador. Immigré a los 7 años. And I think, my passion for education has been just trying to navigate the system, on my own. My mom was college educated in El Salvador, but the language barrier in the US made it difficult for her to kind of help out. So I'm doing it full circle now, working with this program to kind of help students who are the first in their families kind of complete and persist through their college and universities.
Me encanta. We've got a hellraiser and we've got a bridge builder up in here, y'all. And before we keep on going with their lovely introductions, I just wanted to let you know, Mr. Querido Christian, one of our other fellows, he's saying hi to y'all. He's sending you some happy vibes. And I would love to also introduce myself, very short and sweet. But we just wanted to give our audience a crash course and more of a snapshot of what LatinxEd is all about. So today I am representing LatinxEd in case my name at the bottom doesn't already give it away. And we are a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to investing in Latinx students, educators, and families to expand educational equity and opportunity across North Carolina, which is why I'm just so excited to keep on talking to these two superstars, because that is at the core of the work that we do here at LatinxEd. to truly uplift our youth and our community, to let them know that it is because of their identities that they are thriving and not in spite of them. So y'all, let's keep on going. Ooh, part 2 of your introductions. Barbie, go.
Okay, so you know, being Puerto Rican, I was born with citizenship, a citizenship that was kind of forced upon us in 1917, and it had, you know, a reason behind it, which was to get, you know, volunteers to go and fight in that First World War, and so I've had a very complicated relationship with my citizenship, and also with the fact that, you know, having this secondary citizenship, like, we know Puerto Ricans are not entitled to the same benefits as American citizens in the mainland. And so living in that double reality of, yes, having citizenship, but no, you don't get to have the same type of citizenship, has taught me a lot. At 17, though, I decided to leave the island and go kind of pursue my education and learn more about the world. And so I ended up in Amherst, Massachusetts at UMass, starting my degree in journalism. And I always saw myself as a witness to other people's stories, very fascinated by kind of observing people and listening to where they came from and their experiences. And so I got a little confused, thinking that journalism was going to allow me to move beyond that. And so into getting to know people at a deeper level and kind of impacting change for them. So it wasn't until I ended up at UNC in the School of Education, getting my master's degree in school counseling, where I realized, like, wait a minute, yes, I want to be a witness to people's story, but I want to move beyond that and help people be witnesses to their own story, and then use those stories to heal and to empower themselves. So that's how I ended up becoming a school counselor here in Chapel Hill.
Barbie, you just gave me chills with that, about being a witness to other people and other people's greatness, and at the same time bring it a full circle about how important representation is. To let other people realize they too can be witnessing their greatness and their community's greatness through that. And I feel that that is one of the reasons why you're just so amazing at the work that you do, and the reason why you're just such an amazing empath person, because you are very well aware that por alguna razón we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. We need to listen twice as much as we talk, and you are such a pro at that. Talking about being a pro, Elmer, come through. Part 2 of your bio.
Sí, parte 2. So, como dije, I immigrated here when I was 7 from El Salvador. I was born in San Salvador, El Salvador. And I came to the United States by way of New York, Virginia. And well, now I'm currently in DC with like a 3-year stop in North Carolina, which is like, you know, it grew on me to be home. Being a first generation college graduate, solo tenía 2 opciones, be a doctor or be a lawyer. So I went to George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, where I was on the pre-health track. I was trying to become a physical therapist, but I just realized that was not for me. When my friends were talking about broken bones and I would like be squirmish, I knew that was not the profession I needed to go to. And I took some education classes that really piqued my interest in education. So after graduating from George Mason, I went to City Year, which is an education-based nonprofit that's nationwide in major urban areas. And I served in DC. And that experience like really cemented my passion for education, K through 12 to like higher ed. And that's when I went to Clemson, South Carolina, to obtain my master's in counselor education, to work with college students, but also dabble and see what rural education looks like, having been able to work down there, and seeing the differences between urban and rural, and how much there's so much work for us to do to obtain educational equity across, you know, our nation and country, but also to uplift and provide hope for our students that look like me, that don't look like me, that they're the first, that they can like, the sky is not the limit, like outer space, the galaxy, the cosmos are the limit for them to reach.
Wow. Y'all, both of your journeys. is what makes you as great as you are right now, and it's what is informing the work that y'all are doing. There is so much that we could delve into right now, pero lo que yo quisiera, I would like to focus on right now is with both of your journeys, Barbie, from going to Puerto Rico to Massachusetts to North Carolina, Elmer contigo, El Salvador, New York, Virginia, North Carolina, DC, Globetrotter, okay? And especially with the divide that you just mentioned, Elmer, with the rural-urban divide. I'm just super curious, and any one of you can take this question on first, but what are some key things that you wish people knew about Latinx identity?
Bastante. See, we had to take like a deep breath because it's a lot that we want people to know. Pero Barbie, si quieres, puedo decir that Latinx identity is so complex, complicated, beautiful, and messy. And we can go into that a little bit more. I'm gonna just give you a little teaser. But it's very personal to how people like self-identify. And I'm gonna leave it like that so Barbie can tag in.
Listen, we were talking right before going live, and it's so much that it would be impossible to encapsulate in one session. So much complexity, and I love that you use the term messiness, and I think it's important for us to embrace that messiness, that within Latinx identity, we are all here in the diaspora in the United States very much capable of simultaneously oppress as we are oppressed. And so that's where the messiness for me lies. Now, that said, going to Latinx identity, Latine, Latina, Latino, Hispanic identity 101, the very basic is that we are one complex group of people. And so if we were food, we would be a buffet. We were definitely would all be served in a buffet. There will be some items in the menu in the buffet that would be way bigger, kind of in the spotlight, like the prime rib or the turkey. But then there would be those obscure dishes, right, in the salad bar that many people are not looking at for whatever reason. And so it is very confusing, especially for people like myself or other people that have arrived in the country. And yes, I was born as a US citizen, but let me tell you that being born in Puerto Rico is a whole different trip than being born in the mainland. So people that are coming from Puerto Rico, people that are coming from other countries in Latin America, one of the most shocking things that we experience is all of a sudden, you know, arriving into this system of labeling people, this obsession with labeling people and, you know, fitting into a part of the racialized system. And so that is very confusing. And for a lot of us, we struggle with that as well, because, you know, we're Boricuas, we're Mexicans, we're Costarricenses, we're Peruvians and Ecuadorian. And so they insist on making us one giant soup. And there's nothing wrong with soup. But first we need to recognize that we are also mondongo, and we are also sancocho, and we are pozole, and we are, you know, all of the different flavors, ajiaco from Colombia. You know, it's impossible to put us into that giant soup. So that's identity, Latinx identity 101 right there.
Y'all, and this, I just wanted to let y'all know this is resonating with people in our audience right now. Sam, hey Sam, how you doing? They're already saying this is so helpful. Christian, he is living for this buffet analogy. He's eating it up, if you will. So Elmer, take it away.
No, yeah, going with that beautiful analogy, it's like we're not monolithic. And I think that, you know, cuando emigré here, I just knew I was Salvadoreño. They're asked, ¿de dónde eres? El Salvador. It wasn't until I had to fill out questionnaires from school to kind of figure out my race and ethnicity that I always got confused, right? Because having been an immigrant and coming here, I was already othered, right? Because of my language barrier. So I knew that my skin tone was white, right? I knew that, but white did not feel like it represented me, right? Porque era salvadoreño. And when I go to El Salvador, everybody is Salvadoreño. No matter what skin tone they are, we're just Salvadoran. And that was like the first like instance of like my identity crisis, because I'm being othered for not speaking English well, right? Or speaking Spanish. And the stereotypes that people would have about like recent immigrants, or people not knowing that we are a buffet and just like essentializing into one ethnic group, right? Like Mexicano, Mexicans, and it's like, yes, they're part of like the Latinx identity, but there's so much more, right? And the importance of desegregating, to me, data and identities is so important, because we all have a complex history. There's US imperialism that affected Latin America, and how does that show up like in the US? It's important to kind of grapple and unpack with a little bit more, that we're not monolithic. Yes, this is one group, pero como Barbie said, it's a buffet, right? And you have to learn about like the histories of our countries, and kind of see how US imperialism changed, the dynamics of those countries, our countries.
Wow. Y'all, the main reason why I'm not snapping my fingers right now is because the audios on Zoom would crap out, but just know I was snapping to everything.
I think it's also important. I think from my experience working with youth and kids that were born here to parents that came from other countries, it's also really important to understand how this is also a struggle for them, this label that brushes everybody under one category, because it erases their country of origins, it erases their indigenous roots, and it erases their Black roots as well for Afro-Latinos. And so this is why doing that work of identity with youth and kids as early as possible is critical, because, from the moment they're born, the system, wants to place them into a certain position under a certain category, and that is just not healthy for anybody.
Y'all, this is resonating with our people right now. Nicolas just mentioned in the chat how seeing all Latinx people as monolithic does such a disservice to all of our cultures. And I feel that it also matters. Context is super necessary here. For instance, if someone in our community is using Latinx, and we know that they're doing it to be encompassing and to be welcoming, that's one thing. But if someone that is not part of our community, that are trying to like push some sort of very harmful agenda, is using it and saying, well, y'all are a monolith, so I can just use Latinx and I'm not even going to take a minute to listen to your stories, to listen to your cultures, like y'all are from 20 plus countries in this big label that we're using with Latinx. Like that's also like the intention is very necessary to know in these conversations, I feel.
It really is. I have something else that's
Barbie, come through.
For the sake of honesty and transparency, and really, it's important that we also recognize that for our kids that were born here who are American citizens, we can't leave behind the fact that that is also part of their identity. And what I've observed with the youth that I work here, very limited, right? Central North Carolina. I don't know if this is the case in Texas, if it's the case in California, New York. I'm talking from my own reality, my own perspective, is that the system, again, pushes them out so much and denies that American identity simultaneously as their Latino identity, that they themselves don't even see themselves as Americans. So when you're in conversation with kids and families, even their families, I hear a lot, and I'm not sure, Elmer, if you hear this a lot, and I know for a fact that they were born here, right? In many cases, second generation, I hear a lot of kids referring to white kids or white families as the Americans. So not seeing themselves as Americans, right? And so something for us to reflect on is, what does that do to a person, right? When you are existing within a country that you yourself don't believe you belong to, and when you are placed in a situation where there's possibility and opportunity, what does that do when you yourself believe that you are not entitled to those possibilities and opportunities? That's only for the Americans. If that's recorded right in your head, think about the implications of that for our youth and for a kid. So part of this discussion, right, is our relationship with our American identity. This is the case for Puerto Ricans, and it's also the case for other Latin Americans or people from Latin American parents who were born in this country and who have an American citizenship and are entitled to everything that comes with that.
Barbie, I so immensely appreciate the fact that at the very beginning of that fire speech that y'all gave, I don't even know why you were like, well, I don't know if I should mention it, but I love the fact that you talked about, I don't know how the situation is in Texas or in other places of the country, because honestly, with the United States being the big space that it is, and also with the diverse history that exists, like in California and Texas and New York and all of these places, these conversations are super varied and they're super rich. But you can't just grab one of them and pretend that it's a cookie cutter conversation and saying people in this state or people in the West Coast think the same way in the East Coast, because these conversations have evolved differently, because there have been different movements, there have been different history of borders being moved, and just so much messiness that is connected to what you said at the very beginning, Elmer. Like, these conversations are messy.
See, and you know, the title of the conversation is Nuestro Ser, like our being. And to me, like identity, the identity journey is always so personal. And it's also like a note that it can also change, right? So there are new languages constantly evolving, and people are in different stages of their life that might identify differently 10 years from now, right? When I came in as a child, era salvadoreño, and that was that. Like, soy salvadoreño, and that's it. And then my identity has changed, right? Now I identify as Latinx, Salvadoran, Latino, and that is okay because I'm on my journey. And I think, like, I want viewers and people to know that identity work is an ongoing process and that it will shift throughout time. And what Barbie just like dropped on us, this beautiful gem, is that, you know, we have to constantly grapple our positionality and our relation to whiteness, our relation to anti-Blackness, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, this patriarchy that comes from, you know, our countries, but also trying to undo settler colonialism that is part of like the histories and fabrics of Latin America, but it's also so present in the US, right? And this feeling of grappling this American identity with your ethnic and like your roots is important to have, because why are students feeling like they are not American, right? Because they see images that the media portrays and it's not representative of what the US looks like, right? We're just seeing white families, or, you know, who's in the military. We're just seeing these depictions of folks and we don't see representation, right? And socialization is so important because Barbie works with the little ones, right? And I work with, like, you know, young adults, and it's still that conversation of not feeling enough or not feeling like you belong within this identity. And it all stems from childhood. It all stems from like, how are we having conversations with our kids and in them forming a positive like ethnic and racial identity.
You nailed it right there. It's incredible because we did have this conversation before, Elmer. You work with college students and I work with little ones as young as 5 years old. And I see it on day one, right? They come in with these messages and then they notice, they know how other people exercise their existence around them. They're very aware. And they notice the differences. The problem is that when we're not facilitating this identity work, and identity work that is targeted and meaningful and culturally relevant to their reality, we are not teaching them how to create their own narrative. Instead, they're allowing other people to speak for them and to create the narrative of what is the Latinx experience. And so this is why it's so important. And then this issue of the intersecting reality of legal status. Legal status is another thing that interacts really interesting with our Latino identity, Latine identity. And so if we're going to have a conversation in the United States about identity, having that conversation without also simultaneously having the conversation around legal status, we're not doing the work the way it's meant to, to be done. The same with what you mentioned, LGBTQ identity, Black, Indigenous, all of these conversations, all of these intersections need to be addressed, but we have to teach our kids that they get to tell their story. No one else has a right to tell their story. And that's a skill we need to be intentional in teaching, starting when they come into school or even earlier.
I agree.
This is resonating. Just so y'all know, Elaine, our executive director, just slid into our comments and saying, "Woo, preach, y'all," with a little fire emoji. And we also have Sam coming through saying there's so much hope in the fact that it is a journey and that they appreciate this so much. And I do feel that there is such a need to say about how our students, our youth, they need to own up to this journey, and with that same idea of any label that they want to use to self-identify with, it's a conversation starter for people to know where they're stemming from, and not just a period in the conversation. What I feel that oftentimes does happen, that people see a label and they say, there's nothing more to delve into here, which we know that is not the case, honestly. Y'all know, I see y'all smiling, y'all know that it's coming through that way. I would love to be able to delve into identity, but moving it specifically towards social emotional learning, that both of y'all are pros in this topic. Okay, so I want to ask y'all, and I'm going to put my teacher hat on. I'm going to call on Elmer to start first. So what role does social emotional learning play in developing healthy and empowered intersectional Latinx identities in children and youth, and in your case, Elmer, in youth?
Yeah, no, and I want to start by a quote from Dr. Tasha Brown, who's a psychologist. She says that in your formative years, if your identity development is formed with this lens of racism, it impacts how you think about yourself and what you think you can do, where you think you can go, and how to navigate this world, right? And I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Like, we have to have an analysis of like the system and how we are socializing our youth, right? For me, social emotional learning, it needs to be culturally relevant, and being aware about how these systems like play out for our kids, but also teaching, right? Like, in the US, we function in a very binary system, and it needs to change and more to a spectrum, right? It's not one or the other, it's a spectrum. And I love Barbie's analogy of it's a buffet, right? So our identities are a buffet. We get to like mix and match, si queremos, pupusas como fongo y la ensalada. Like, we are like putting that together, and it's important to know that, right? Like, we're not cookie cutter. And so for me, working with the youth, with students, is affirming their identities and also letting them know that there is not one way to be Latino, Latinx, and respecting the label that they use, right? But I think if you haven't heard the Tecito from Elaine and Carol, please go back and watch it, because it is so important for self-identification and respecting people, right? But it's also important to know if there's a company, if there's a school district that is using a label, of the reason of why they're using that label, right? So it's like labels can help us unify us, but it's one way to unify, and there needs to be context. What is the mission of why we're using this label, right? Because we want to be more inclusive, and that's why we use Latinx. But we also may be aware that students might identify as Chicano, as Hispanic, as Latino, as Latin, and that's okay, right? But it's like communicating that, and I think that is important. So for me, how I see social emotional learning for college students is incorporating ethnic studies into the curriculum, right? I think California just passed a law, like don't quote me on that, but like they're gonna require, actually they are gonna require ethnic studies to be part of K through 12 curriculum. And that's a huge win, right? Because now we have, you know, the youth, our kids learning about histories aside from the dominant narrative, right? Aside from this just white lens and white gaze, they're gonna learn about other communities and their development, and that they've always have been here in the fabric of the United States. So I think that's really cool, right? I think California is doing that, and I hope to see that, you know, across the US, and universities have that opportunity, especially historically white institutions, to kind of bring ethnic studies on campus.
Oh, Elmer, I love the fact that you just brought up who has access to that type of education, and especially to that social emotional learning when you started mentioning colleges. We can't make this have a price tag for our kids to know their history, for them to feel empowered in their true identity. We can't put that barrier in the way for them to truly know how it is that they can thrive from their identity, from their labels, from their own journey. Ooh, 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 Elmer. Barbie, throwing it over to you, corazón.
Listen, I was reflecting over the weekend, and in reality, you know, I'm a school counselor in a public school system. And so I'm also a founder of Mariposas, which is an affinity space, right, for Latino students, and where they get to explore identity and really take a deep dive in using identity to strengthen their socio-emotional health and all of the good stuff. But what this opportunity has afforded me is the fact that I work within a system, right, where everything in the public school system is standardized, right, from testing to curriculum. And so socio-emotional curriculum it's not the exception. Okay, we even standardize students. That's the reality of public school education. It's painful to say that because you leave your heart and soul out there as a public school educator, but I'm a big believer that we're really working for genuine change and we are not looking at what's wrong within the system, then you know, we continue doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different solutions and a different outcome. And so that doesn't make any sense. And so what I've been able to learn while straddling that line between Mariposas and being a public school counselor is how critical it is for socio-emotional learning to be culturally relevant, to have raza relevance, right? I mean, it plays such an enormous role in identity development. And let's just say that identity development and socio-emotional learning are a two-way street. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's incredible how connected these two things are. It's a symbiotic relationship between both, right? Cell plays an enormous role in identity development, and proper identity development strengthens socio-emotional health. Like there's no way around it. So if you decide, for example, to continue targeting socio-emotional learning and continue serving it as a white-size-fit-all solution, right, in public education, you're leaving a huge part out, which is identity development. And you're standardizing socio-emotional learning, which is something that should never be standardized because it should be individual. And so until we resolve or start moving towards the direction of blending those two and embracing the symbiotic relationship between the two of them, we're not going to get anywhere. And I think my work in Mariposas has allowed me to see the impact of being able to do that simultaneously, While then the next day I go into my work as a public school educator, and I'm like, man, we got a lot to do.
Barbie, I have no clue how you have so many hours in the day to make both things happen, and in such an amazing way with the grace that you do it. There is, if you could remind me of that, there was this one quote that you mentioned to us, and it comes from Liberate TED that talks specifically about the importance of culturally relevant social emotional learning. Could you, my memory is
Yeah,
funny,
I mean, if you want to truly get to like study and really do a lot of learning around transformative socio-emotional learning, you have to look up Dr. Dina Simmons. She is the director and the founder of Liberate Ed, and she calls that white size fits all socio-emotional learning, standardized socio-emotional learning, white supremacy with a hug. Because it completely, it teaches to the norm. And what we know about public school is that the norms were created for the kids of privileged families and kids that are white. And so when we're teaching to the norm, we're leaving everybody else behind. And that number nowadays is at 53%. 53% of public school students in this nation are students of color, and they are receiving the traditional cell instead of transformative cell that takes into account their identity and how their identity interacts with the world that they live in, the socio-political context of the world that they live in.
Wow, wow, wow. Barbie, right now, Leslie, that's watching the live right now. She's mentioned something that's connected to what you just said, that she says, one of the things I have realized is that while in K-12, I was always confused as to where I stood with my identity and figuring out who I was and where I stood within my community. I mean, if that doesn't say it all, y'all, I don't know what does.
Because the system, this is the thing, that the system, you're trying to function in a space that you are not the audience for, right? In public school, and I'm not gonna go ahead and jump into this generalization, kind of assuming that all public school systems are the same. But when you have a majority of educators in this nation, what is it, like 90% of educators are white women? Right? And then you have 53% of students who are students of color, whether that is Afro-descendant or Latino, Asian. There's going to be a gap there somewhere. And so you only can write for an audience that you're familiar with as a writer, right? To use a writer analogy. And so I'm not surprised that her experience was like that, because, who is the audience of public school curriculum? Who tends to be the audience? Where is the curriculum coming from? Who is writing it? Who is writing the standards? Who is doing this work at the state level, policy making level? What is it that they want our children learning? Ethnic studies has been such a controversial thing. It took California a long time to pass the law that Elmer was mentioning. Arizona passed it and then got reversed. And then North Carolina, Texas. Again, politicians are in charge of getting, of saying what our kids get to learn. And then let's not even talk about demographics of politicians themselves. So this is a problem that goes all the way to the top, and then it seeps right into our classrooms.
And that comment to me is just really sticking out, because not knowing where you belong in K through 12 is because the system, right? So I remember like being in honors or gifted classes and then being one of 2 or 3 like students of color, right? And then seeing that separation and inequity for ESL, right? And just like the standards or like the perceptions of like what it means, that tokenization. And it isn't if you have access to college, that's when you have your second identity crisis, right? Of like, What does it mean to be Latinx, right? Now that we're getting knowledge, right? In college, we get to choose, whereas in K through 12, it's a curriculum that kind of dictates what you have to learn and is not giving room for our students to develop that positive ethnic identity, because it's a luxury for some of us to be able to obtain access, post-secondary access, right? What about the students that are unable to because of legal status or other factors, right? They just want to go into the workforce. Like, what are we doing for them to develop a positive ethnic identity? And that's why it's so important. There's a loop, right? K through 12 feeds into higher education. And what's happening for those that are deciding to do, a certificate degree or enter the workforce, right? Are they having questions about their identity, right? And academia may not be studying it because they're focused on the people that have made it to college or in college. And it's something that I'm pondering right now because I see so many of the students that, I work with is trying to figure out who they are, right? Because K through 12 was like an experience that they're trying to unpack and unravel of like, where does that leave them now, right? So that's why I say identity process is an ongoing process. And, Michelle Obama talks about becoming, and I honestly feel like we're always trying to become like that better version, that kinder version of our younger self, right? And trying to understand and really grapple with our identity and how all of these systems and isms play into affecting how we live and show up in the world.
Elmer, and I have so much right now in my head. It's like, but here's the thing. It's like, I'm wondering, first of all, if you found in your experience with college students that a lot of them feel a little robbed by their experience in middle school, high school, in school.
I would say that some of my students would feel robbed, right? Because our stories are not told, right? I can't tell you, I always struggle when they said, name a influential Latinx political figure, right? For the longest time, the only person I could name was Cesar Chavez. Mm-hmm. That one person that we highlight, right? And Dolores Huerta, and not seeing that there are Latinx leaders all around us, right? From the sanitation crew to like the cafeteria crew, there are leaders in our communities, but because the dominant norm has labeled or classified this is what a leader looks like, it robs for some of our students to kind of be like, no, there are leaders in my community and this is what they look like and this is what they do, right? So I do see it. And, for me, I was like, wow, I should have taken like a Latino studies class, right? To learn more about my history, because I wasn't learning about that in K through 12, right? It was world history and it was very brief. It was broad and not really talk about the implications that the US has had on so many countries, right? And it's something that I always am fascinated by is that the US is so self-centered. Like we only know some of the issues that are happening here, but do not know the issues that are happening in other countries and how the US has had a hand in that situation. But right now they're removed because they depleted the resources. They took away what they needed at that time, that it's like, that's not our issue. When in reality it is, because they meddled and interfere with sovereign like nations. So yeah, I do feel, and I'll speak for myself personally, I also feel that I was robbed, right? That I did not get to learn about the contributions of Latinos, knowing that they've always been here. And the complexities of what it means to be Latino in the South, right? So I joke and I'm like, I don't think Richmond is like that borderline, like, yes, you're in the South, but not really in the South, porque I just saw a lot of people that looked like me, right? But it wasn't when I moved to South Carolina and being in the Carolinas that that was my third identity crisis. Like, what does it mean to be Latino in the South, right? Because again, in the South, we are learned in a very black and white binary and dichotomy that we're like, but wait a minute, indigenous people have been here. Like, Asian, Latino people have been here. Why don't I hear their stories? And what does that mean, right? Because we always talk about racism in the South and how backwards it is. But in reality, there's a coalition of multiracial folks like organizing, trying to change that. But because of the system and the white supremacy, those stories are not being told. So it goes back to like writing our own stories and kind of learning more about them.
Yeah, and I mean, and it also goes back to us educators when, you know, in the younger levels and in public school to facilitate the space to center, right, the stories of our students and to allow our students to be quiet. We need to be quiet, get out of the way, and facilitate a space for students to tell you, okay, about the people in their lives who come in with tremendous assets. Maybe not assets and money or resources, but character assets, right? When we look at the definition from CASEL, which is the largest organization that does socio-emotional learning work, and that a lot of schools use to define socio-emotional learning, right? The definition for CASEL is self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. How powerful would it be for us to teach all of those things using our students' narratives and stories as the platform for those discussions? Because let me tell you, there is a lot to learn about our ancestors and about our parents and about the people that are doing the work of resistance and resilience and change in this country who happen to be Latino. And those are the ideal vehicles to be learning about all this socio-emotional learning. And so that's where we're missing out. That's where identity ties up perfectly with socio-emotional learning, but we need to make socio-emotional learning, we need to racify it, right? We need to make it very, very culturally relevant. And until we do so, we're missing out on a huge opportunity, and we're robbing our students of an opportunity to speak for themselves.
Barbie, I'm taking that. We need to racify everything. Okay. And this is resonating with our audience, y'all. Marisa, one of our other fellows, she mentions how banking education, this is banking education at its finest. We believe our students come into our learning spaces empty, and we continue with this empty feeling with education until when? Until when? And right now that I'm going through all of these comments, there's another juicy question, y'all, and this one is directed to Elmer from Joshua Daniel. And he asks about, as a Salvadorian, what were some specific challenges and barriers that you encountered while navigating the educational system during the first month after your arrival in the US?
Yes, so when I arrived to the US, I don't know if it's common in El Salvador, but we call it preparatoria, right? So it like prepares you for kindergarten. So I was so upset. Me and my brother, my twin brother, were so upset when we had to immigrate to the US because in El Salvador, we finished school in October. I finished preparatoria to go into kindergarten the next year. But then my mom decided to immigrate that month. And, you know, in the US, you got to go to school. So they enrolled us in school, but they didn't understand what preparatoria was. So they skipped us a grade. So I was in second grade when really I should have been in first grade in terms of like my age group, right? And to be with my age peers. So I think the challenge for me was trying to learn. The language barrier was a challenge, right? But luckily in New York and Long Island, there was bilingual and ESL classes that kind of helped, but also some of my peers spoke Spanish, right? So I could go on a rabbit hole about my challenges. I didn't know like the etiquette. I wasn't understanding the teacher. So I would just like look at my peers' work and like copy it and try to make sense of it, not knowing that you're not supposed to do that. But I just wasn't understanding what the teacher was like teaching. So that was one of my challenges of like grappling of like, wow, I'm Salvadorian, classes are in English, I don't understand what is going on. Like, it doesn't mean that I don't understand the material, it's just the language barrier. And that was one of my biggest like challenges, navigating that place, but also seeing like that self-segregation of, as little kids, it's like, oh, he's othered, right? Or my Dominican friends or Puerto Rican friends, because New York has a lot of Dominican and Puerto Rican population, it's like we're othered, right? And it's like these are the people that would hang out, and then I would see my white peers just like hanging out or not talking or interacting with us, right? So it was very isolated like feeling for me those first months, because I felt like I wasn't as smart as my peers because of the language barrier. And people would talk to me like I didn't have common sense. They would like yell and like talk louder. I'm like, I can hear you, I just don't know what you're saying. So that was my biggest challenge, like navigating this new system and these standardized testing, where like in El Salvador, I was just learning, right? I was just exploring and discovering things. Whereas here, I had to be tested. And that was like the first, like, biggest challenge for me, is like, why am I being tested for so many things?
Oh, wow, wow.
Powerful.
I'm just
tested. That's pretty powerful right there. You were being tested for the first time.
being tested and not offering a space for you to grow and explore and continue your further education the way that you were of, let your curiosity come through and thrive. Y'all, I would love to, we've been talking for a while, but I would love for us to wrap up this conversation with this final question. I know, Barbie.
But I have something to say. He just blew my mind with that. Okay, really short, one sentence. Imagine what being measured constantly and tested does to your identity, period.
Yeah.
That's what our kids go through.
Messes you up, that's what it does. It's giving you this parameter of being, you need to measure up to this. And if you don't, that's on you.
And you're out. You're out of the equation. You're out of opportunity. If you don't measure up to this,
then you're not enough.
You're not enough. No eres suficiente.
Yep. Y'all, and with this conversation, I want to ask this one last question. With both of y'all, your experiences, can you share some of your experiences working with Latinx youth and helping them develop healthy intersectional Latinx identities? I'm gonna pick on Barbie or Elmer.
Well, again, I mean, it goes back to having that privilege and that honor. Sometimes it's a privilege and it's a curse to having to function within the space of standardized public education, and then the space of Mariposas, right? Which is a space that I created with the purpose of being able to take on this work in an affinity space, in a space where each of the kids that were coming in and the families were able to see each other and begin healing in solidarity, right? And so when I started Mariposas, I was able to do that work, bringing in these families and these kids to do the work of socio-emotional learning through the lens of identity, through the lens of voice, through the lens of social justice, and do it the way I knew, right, would work. And so it's been 8 years of doing that work, and it has paid off immensely. We meet weekly, and I have learned so much. We started with 9-year-olds years ago, and some of them are already in college, right? So they are able, throughout the years, they have been able to express, right, not only the good things and how their identity continues to develop, but they unfortunately, right, have also been evidence of the harm that is inflicted on a lot of students in the public school system. And so for me, it's like it's happening right in front of me, all this truth, all this evidence, all this data in the form of words and stories and narratives that they are sharing, that they have been sharing for years, right? And so I know this is the truth of the impact of their day-to-day. They were able to come into the Mariposa space and share that impact. And I was able, by being a witness to their story, to help them heal and then build from there. And so it has been an incredible blessing, beautiful just to be a witness to all that through Mariposas.
Barbie, me encanta. And especially when you keep on saying witnessing them, and by that saying, I see you as you are, and you already have everything that it takes to be your own glorious self, y punto. But I'm recognizing you and I'm recognizing your dignity as is. I love that. Elmer, drop.
See, but para mí is being in the journey with them. So creating a space for, you know, college age students to reckon with their Latinx identity, to probe and dissect that identity. Who's being included? Who's being excluded? How can we be more inclusive and welcoming, right? How do we address, you know, anti-Blackness, right? Like the messiness, right? How do we address anti-Blackness, homophobia, transphobia, right? How do we dissect our proximity to whiteness, right? What does solidarity mean, you know, in building a coalition where we see each other, right? And I think that's my work, you know, when I say I'm a hope dealer, is I want, you know, my students to kind of see themselves and have that confidence and build that confidence in themselves to like, I am a whole person, I'm a whole being, and I want to be in relation with like other communities and acknowledge our shared humanity, right? And I think to me, that's so important in the work that I do. And it's just asking those questions and reckoning, doing the messy work, right? Because our identity is beautiful, it's complex, but we got to do the messy work. We have to interrogate who's being included, who's being excluded in these conversations, right? And not trying to essentialize somebody's experience because they may identify differently, right? Our identities are personal. And, you know, in the US, in the system, our identities are also political, right? So I think that's really important. And we learned about this in the past election, right? When they were giving out demographics about, oh my gosh, a Latino like voting block is, what is going on? We just thought they were all gonna be liberal and like left-leaning, and shocker, that we are complex, right? And we're not monolithic. And it has to do, again, with those histories of US imperialism and regionalismo too, right? That play a role in how we show up and be. So that is, you know, what I enjoy about my work is creating that space for our students to grapple with their identity and dissect it, to kind of always be in the process of becoming, right? Nuestro said our being, right? And being comfortable in our own skin, and having that confidence to walk in any door and be like, this is me, right? And have that confidence, soy yo, and that's it, mic drop.
Me encanta, me encanta. Because at the end of the day, I feel that this identity journey is a never-ending journey. We keep on learning more about each other. We keep on learning more about our family history, about our country history, about just ourselves. Like what we thought about 10 years ago about our identity is not the same. It's not reflected to how we think about it 10 years now or 10 years from now, right? And just being able to sit with that and create that space that both of you are masterful at doing, creating that space for our youth, for them to truly be able to grapple with that and know that it's okay. The messiness is okay. It's okay that you don't know the answers right now, but continuing on with this curiosity and also approaching other people that way, to your point, Barbie, of being a witness to other people and approaching others with curiosity, the same way that we would want them to approach us. Like, I think that's it. Woo! Y'all, if it weren't because we need to keep to a schedule, we could keep on making this cafecito be 2 hours long, pero se les aprecia, corazones, se les aprecia the work that y'all are doing for our students and our youth. And if anyone is listening to the chat right now, if y'all want a part 2, come through and we'll make that happen. We'll schedule it another one because I feel like we needed to hold ourselves back to make the 1 hour mark here. Okay, y'all. I hope that you enjoyed this cafecito as much as we did. And thank you so, so much to every single person that shared comments during this cafecito, that shared your questions. Please know that this is not the end of this conversation at all. We hope that you see this as a conversation starter. Our lovely Katerina has been dropping so many wonderful links in the chat, so please come through, go through all of them. And Elaine also did the due diligence of looking up some quotes that y'all dropped. So to be continued, but thank you so, so much, Barbie and Elmer. And we hope that y'all have a lovely rest of your evening, y'all.
Gracias a ti,
Bye.
Carol.
Gracias.